The plasma bolt missed Commander Jake Harrison's head by 3 inches. He dove behind the crystalline pillar as return fire lit up the Valorian throne room. His squad was pinned down, outnumbered 15-1, and the extraction window closed in 4 minutes. The mission was simple on paper: retrieve the human diplomats, get out alive. Nobody mentioned the Valorian Royal Guard would be wearing combat exoskeletons. "Martinez, flank left!" Jake shouted over the chaos. Corporal Lisa Martinez rolled from cover, her rifle spitting coherent light. 2 guards dropped. The rest adapted, shields interlocking into a wall of energy. Jake's HUD flashed red. Ammunition critical, time critical, everything critical. That's when he saw her. Princess Ashira stood at the far end of the hall, surrounded by her own guards, watching the firefight with luminescent violet eyes. Her skin shimmered like polished bronze, and the ceremonial armor she wore seemed more decorative than functional. But it was her expression that stopped him cold. Not fear, not anger, curiosity. Their eyes met, across 100 feet of burning chaos. Jake's translator implant caught her words even through the gunfire. The human commander fights with honor. He didn't have time to process that. A concussion grenade detonated near Martinez, sending her sprawling. Jake sprinted into the open, firing suppression bursts, and dragged her back to cover. His shield screamed warnings as energy bolts hammered into them. "We're not making extraction," Martinez coughed, checking her rifle. "Suggestions?" Jake's mind raced. The Valorians had cut off every exit. Standard protocol said fight to the last round, then activate the Deadman beacon. Hope the Navy glassed the palace before the Valorians could extract intel from their corpses. But he looked at Princess Ashira again. She was speaking rapidly to her guards, pointing at his position. They weren't advancing. Why weren't they advancing? "Ceasefire!" Her voice boomed through speakers, translated into perfect English. The Valorian guns went silent. Jake's squad held their aim, but stopped shooting. The sudden quiet felt more dangerous than the battle. Ashira walked forward, alone, her guards hissing protests. She moved with fluid grace, each step deliberate. She stopped 20 feet from Jake's position. "You came for your people," she said. "You value their lives above your own. This is not what we were told about humans." Jake stood slowly, rifle lowered but ready. "What were you told? That you were conquerors, destroyers, that you came to our world to take what is not yours. We came because your father kidnapped our diplomats," Jake said. "We just want them back." Ashira's expression shifted. Something like realization flickered across her alien features. "My father told me they were spies, criminals. They were teachers," Jake said, "here to establish an exchange program." The princess turned to her guards and spoke in rapid Valorian. They looked uncertain. She spoke again, more forcefully. Then she looked back at Jake. "If I could unite our peoples, end this misunderstanding before it becomes war, I would bind myself to that cause forever." Jake's tactical implant was screaming at him. 2 minutes to extraction. His squad needed to move now, or they'd be stranded in hostile territory with no support and no way home. But Princess Ashira was still standing there, waiting for his response, and something in her eyes told him this moment mattered more than he understood. "Stand down," he told his squad. "Sir?" Martinez looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "That's an order." Jake stepped fully into the open, lowering his rifle completely. Every instinct from 15 years of combat told him this was suicide. Ashira matched his movement, walking closer until they stood face to face. Up close, she was taller than him by half a foot, her features sharp and elegant, her skin marked with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed gently. "You trust easily for a warrior," she said. I don't trust easily, Jake replied, but I recognize truth when I hear it. Your father lied to you. Our people lied to us. We're both pawns in someone else's war. Ashira's guards were advancing now, weapons raised. She held up one hand without looking back, and they froze. My father is dying, she said quietly. The War Council has his ear. They want conflict with humanity because they fear your expansion. They manufactured this crisis. And you? I have studied your species, your literature, your history, your music. You are not monsters. You are survivors who learn to dream. She paused. I have spent my life preparing to rule, but I was never allowed to choose my own path until now. The extraction timer hit 90 seconds. Jake's comm crackled. Harrison, we are leaving with or without you in 1 minute. Confirm status. He muted the channel. What are you proposing? A union, Ashira said, between our houses, between our peoples. In Valorian culture, a royal marriage bond cannot be broken by war councils or political maneuvering. If you and I were joined, it would force both our governments to negotiate. To find peace, Jake almost laughed. You want to marry me? We just met while shooting at each other. I want to save millions of lives, Ashira corrected, both human and Valorian. This is the only way I can see to do it. My position gives me leverage, but only if I use it now, before my father's death transfers power to the War Council. Martinez had moved up beside Jake, keeping her rifle trained on the Valorian guards. Commander, this is insane. She could be lying. This could be a trap. It's definitely insane, Jake agreed. But he was thinking about the intelligence briefings. The Valorian Empire controlled 40 star systems. Humanity controlled 12. A war between them would be devastating. Billions dead on both sides. And for what territory? Resources? Pride? He looked at Ashira again. If I agree to this, what happens to my people? The diplomats your father took? Released immediately, she said. I will claim jurisdiction as my first act, and I will need witnesses to this union. Your squad and my guards will serve that purpose. 60 seconds. Jake made a decision that would either save the galaxy or doom his entire career. I hope I could wed her, he whispered to himself in English, testing the words, seeing if they felt like surrender or salvation. Ashira's translator caught it. Her eyes widened. I accept, she said in perfect English. Without the translator, the throne room exploded into chaos. Valorian guards shouted protests. Martinez grabbed Jake's arm. The comm channel erupted with his superiors, demanding answers. But Ashira was already moving, striding toward her guards with absolute authority. She spoke in Valorian, her voice ringing through the hall. The guards looked shocked, then angry, then resigned. One of them, an older warrior with scarred armor, stepped forward and knelt. The others followed. Ashira turned back to Jake. It is done. By Valorian law, I have declared my intention. The ceremony must happen within 1 solar cycle, or the bond is void. Can you get us both to neutral territory? Jake unmuted his comm. Harrison to extraction team. Change of plans. I need immediate transport for 2. Priority Alpha. Say again, Commander. Did you say 2? Affirmative. And patch me through to Admiral Garrett. He's going to want to hear this directly. The extraction shuttle broke through the palace shields 3 minutes later, weapons hot, expecting a fight. Instead, they found Jake Harrison, standing beside a Valorian princess, surrounded by her guards and his squad, all weapons lowered. As they lifted off, Martinez sat down hard beside Jake. Sir, do you realize what you just did? Started a diplomatic incident that'll either end a war or start a bigger one, Jake said. He looked at Ashira, who was staring out the viewport at the stars. No pressure? Ashira smiled, an expression that transformed her entire face. I have prepared my whole life for pressure, Commander Harrison. The question is whether you have. The shuttle jumped to hyperspace, carrying the most unlikely peace treaty in human history. The briefing room on Earth Defense Station Meridian felt like a courtroom. Jake stood at attention while 3 admirals, 2 senators, and the Secretary of Interstellar Affairs stared at him like he'd personally declared war on the entire Valorian Empire. Princess Ashira stood beside him, her posture equally rigid, her ceremonial robes replaced by simple civilian clothing that somehow made her look more alien, not less. Admiral Garrett broke the silence first. Commander Harrison, in your own words, explain why you committed humanity to a binding marriage alliance without authorization, consultation, or even basic psychiatric evaluation. Jake kept his voice level. The Valorians were prepared to execute our diplomats within hours. Princess Ashira offered the only solution that prevented immediate bloodshed and gave us leverage for negotiation. I made a tactical decision. Tactical? Senator Caroline Ross leaned forward, her expression sharp. You got engaged to an alien princess. That's not tactics, Commander. That's fantasy. Ashira spoke before Jake could respond. Senator, in Valorian culture, marriage bonds between ruling houses have ended 17 major conflicts over the past millennium. It is our oldest and most respected method of forging peace. Commander Harrison understood this and acted with remarkable strategic clarity. Or he was thinking with something other than strategic clarity, muttered Admiral Chen. Enough! Secretary Monroe raised his hand. Princess Ashira, your father has issued a galaxy-wide statement declaring you a traitor and demanding your immediate return. The Valorian War Council has authorized military action if we don't comply. How exactly does this marriage prevent war? Ashira's bioluminescent patterns flared brighter. A sign Jake had learned meant she was angry. My father is being manipulated by High Commander Zreth, who wants war because his faction profits from military expansion. But Valorian law is absolute. If I complete the marriage bond, I become immune from my father's authority. More importantly, any attack on my chosen mate or his people becomes an attack on the royal bloodline itself. 60% of the Valorian military would refuse such orders. 60%? Senator Ross repeated. That leaves 40% who wouldn't. Civil war, Admiral Garrett said quietly. You're offering us a choice between fighting the Valorians or watching them fight themselves. I am offering you a third option, Ashira corrected. My father is dying. Within months, perhaps weeks, the succession will be contested. If I have a legitimate marriage bond, I can claim the throne with Commander Harrison as my consort. The moderate factions will support me. We can end the War Council's power and establish a real peace. The room fell silent. Jake watched the calculation happening behind their eyes. Political angles, military advantages, risk assessment. Nobody was asking if he wanted this. Nobody cared that 48 hours ago he'd been a combat officer with no political ambitions whatsoever. Secretary Monroe pulled up a holographic display. Our xenosociology team has analyzed Valorian marriage customs. The ceremony requires both parties to undergo a neural bonding process, permanent neurological connection, shared emotional states, some level of thought overlap. He looked directly at Jake. You'd be psychically linked to an alien for the rest of your life, Commander. Are you prepared for that? Jake felt Ashira tense beside him. He hadn't known about the neural component. That changed things. That changed everything. How permanent? He asked. Irreversible, Monroe said. The Valorian brain structure is compatible enough with human neurology that the bond would take, but severing it would kill you both. Martinez, who'd been allowed into the briefing as a witness, spoke up from the back. Sir, permission to speak freely? Granted, Admiral Garrett said. I was there. I saw how Princess Ashira stopped her guards from killing us. I saw her risk her own position to save human lives she'd never met. If she's willing to bind herself permanently to one of us for peace, maybe we should trust that commitment. Senator Ross shook her head. Or maybe she's a very talented spy executing the most elaborate infiltration operation in history. Then why offer the neural bond? Jake asked. If she's a spy, that would compromise her own mind. She'd be as vulnerable to me as I'd be to her. Ashira turned to look at him. You understand? I'm starting to. Admiral Garrett stood up. This decision goes above my pay grade. I'm forwarding this to the Global Defense Council. In the meantime, Commander Harrison, you and Princess Ashira are confined to the diplomatic quarter. No external communication. No unsupervised interaction. We'll have specialists evaluate the situation, Admiral, Jake said. How long do we have before the Valorian War Council makes their move? Intelligence estimates 72 hours before they commit to full invasion protocols. 3 days. Jake looked at Ashira. Really looked at her. She'd given up everything for this. Her father, her home, her entire world. And she was asking him to do the same. Not just marry her, but merge with her. Become something neither fully human nor fully Valorian. As the guards escorted them out, Ashira spoke quietly. I did not know about the neural bond requirement. My tutors never mentioned it. If you wish to withdraw, I will understand. What happens if I do? The Valorians invade, millions die, and I am returned to my father in chains. That's not much of a choice. No, Ashira agreed. It is not. They reached the diplomatic quarters, a luxury suite designed for ambassadors, not prisoners. The guards sealed the door behind them. Jake walked to the viewport and stared out at Earth, hanging blue and white against the black. Ashira joined him. Your planet is beautiful. So is yours, Jake said. I saw it from orbit during extraction, those purple oceans. The twin moons. I miss it already. They stood in silence. Finally, Jake turned to face her. The neural bond. What does it actually feel like? I do not know, Ashira admitted. I have never bonded, but my mother described it as feeling whole for the first time, like discovering a part of yourself you never knew was missing. She paused. She also said it was terrifying. Honest, I appreciate that. Commander Harrison, I will not force you into this. If there is another way, I will find it. Jake laughed, a short, bitter sound. Call me Jake. If we're going to be psychically married, we should probably use first names. Ashira's patterns pulsed with what might have been amusement. Jake, I am Ashira, not princess, not highness, just Ashira, just Ashira, Jake repeated. The woman who might save the galaxy or break it trying. I prefer to think I am the woman who refused to accept that war was inevitable. Outside the viewport, a Valorian warship appeared at the edge of sensor range. Then another. Then 5 more. The 72-hour countdown had just gotten a lot shorter. The alarm siren started at 0300 hours. Jake was already awake, staring at the ceiling, when the red emergency lights flooded the diplomatic quarters. Ashira appeared in the doorway of her room, fully dressed, her patterns blazing bright with alertness. They are here, she said. Not a question. Jake pulled up the tactical display on his wrist unit. 30 Valorian warships had just dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge. Defense Station Meridian was going to full combat alert. He could hear boots pounding in the corridors outside, weapons being charged, blast doors sealing. His comm erupted. Harrison, get to the command center now. Bring the Princess Garrett. They ran. The station had transformed into a war machine. Every soft surface retracted, every weapon port open. Marines in full combat gear lined the corridors. Some of them stared at Ashira with open hatred. Others just looked scared. The command center was pure, controlled chaos. Admiral Garrett stood at the central holotank, watching the Valorian fleet arrangement. Secretary Monroe was on 3 simultaneous calls with Earth, Mars Colony, and the Outer Defense Grid. Status? Jake asked. They're not attacking, Garrett said. They're positioning for blockade. No shots fired yet. He turned to Ashira. Your people are demanding we hand you over in the next hour, or they start hitting our orbital infrastructure. Ashira studied the display. That is High Commander Zareth's flagship, the Crimson Vengeance. He is commanding this operation personally. Can you talk to him? He would rather die than negotiate with what he considers a traitor. Ashira's fingers moved across the holotank, highlighting ship positions. But his formation is wrong. See how the dreadnoughts are positioned forward? He expects you to fight. He wants you to fire first so he can claim human aggression. Senator Ross burst into the command center. The Global Defense Council has made their decision. We're not handing over Princess Ashira. We're also not authorizing the marriage bond. The risk is too great. Then what exactly are we doing? Jake demanded. Diplomatic solution. We're offering to mediate between Ashira and her father. Neutral ground. No marriage required. Ashira shook her head. That will not work. My father is beyond mediation, and Zareth will use any delay to position more ships. As if to prove her point, 6 more Valorian vessels appeared on sensors. Admiral Chen pulled up a tactical simulation. If they attack, we can hold for maybe 90 minutes before they breach our defenses. After that, they have a clear shot at Earth. Jake watched the simulation play out. Red markers overwhelmed blue. Casualty estimates scrolled past. Millions dead in the first hour. Billions if the fight reached the surface. There is another option, Ashira said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. I can return to the flagship. Surrender myself to Zareth. He will take me back to my father, and the fleet will withdraw. Absolutely not, Jake said immediately. It would save your world. They'll execute you. Ashira met his eyes. Better one death than millions. No, Jake turned to Admiral Garrett. Sir, requesting permission to proceed with the marriage bond immediately. Commander, the Council just denied that option. The Council is making a mistake. Princess Ashira is right. This is the only play that changes the board. Once the bond is complete, Valorian law forces Dreth to stand down or risk civil war. It's our best chance. Senator Ross stepped forward. You can't possibly be volunteering to permanently merge your mind with an alien based on a political calculation. I'm volunteering to permanently merge my mind with someone who's been willing to sacrifice everything for peace since the moment I met her, Jake shot back. That's not political. That's just recognizing who she is. Ashira's patterns flared bright. Jake, you do not have to do this. Yeah, I do. Because you're right. War isn't inevitable. We can choose something different.
An explosion rocked the station.
Everyone grabbed for support. Report! Garrett barked. Warning shot across our bow. The tactical officer called out. Zareth is broadcasting on all channels. He's given us 30 minutes to produce Princess Ashira or he starts hitting civilian targets. Secretary Monroe looked between Jake and Ashira. Even if we authorize this, the bonding ceremony takes hours. We don't have hours. There is a faster way, Ashira said. The emergency combat bond, used when Valorian warriors must link minds during battle. It is crude, painful, and dangerous, but it can be done in minutes. How dangerous? Garrett asked. 20% fatality rate. If our neural patterns are incompatible, it will kill us both instantly. The command center went silent. Jake laughed. He couldn't help it. Of course there's a 20% chance of instant death. Why would anything about this situation be simple? This is insane, Senator Ross said. This whole situation is insane, Jake countered, but I've been in combat for 15 years. I've taken worse odds on worse intel for worse reasons. At least this time I'm betting on something I believe in. Another explosion. Closer. The lights flickered. 15 minutes, Tactical reported. Admiral Garrett looked at Secretary Monroe. Monroe looked at Senator Ross. Ross closed her eyes and took a long breath. Do it, Garrett said. But if you both die, I'm putting stupid heroic sacrifice on both your tombstones.
Ashira pulled a small device from her robes.
I brought the bonding catalyst. I hoped we might have the chance. You came prepared to marry a human you barely know. I came prepared to do whatever was necessary. She held up the device. It looked like a crystal shard wrapped in silver wire. We must both hold this while I speak the bonding words. Our neural patterns will synchronize. If we survive the initial connection, the bond becomes permanent. Jake took one side of the crystal. Ashira took the other. Her hand was warm, her skin humming with energy. Last chance to back out, she said. Not a chance. Ashira began speaking in Valorian. The crystal started to glow. Jake felt heat spreading up his arm, into his chest, crawling toward his brain. It didn't hurt yet. Then it did. His vision exploded into light and color. He felt Ashira's mind rushing into his, and his mind rushing into hers. Memories that weren't his own flooded his consciousness. A childhood on a purple ocean world. The weight of royal responsibility. The loneliness of duty. The desperate hope that peace was possible, and she was seeing him. Every mission, every loss, every moment of doubt, every decision that haunted him. The pain intensified. His knees buckled. Ashira caught him, or he caught her, or they caught each other. He couldn't tell where he ended and she began. Then, like a door slamming open, something clicked into place. Jake gasped. Ashira gasped. They were still two people, but now they were also one. It worked, Ashira breathed. Jake could feel her relief, as if it were his own, because it was his own, their own. Admiral Garrett was staring. I'll take that as a successful bonding. Broadcast to the Valorian fleet, Jake said, his voice stronger than he felt. Tell High Commander Zreth that Princess Ashira has completed her marriage bond. She is now protected under Valorian royal law. Any attack on human territory is an attack on the royal bloodline. Ashira touched her temple, and Jake felt her reaching out through Valorian communication channels he didn't even know existed. She was using the bond to amplify her signal, broadcasting directly to every ship in the fleet. She spoke in Valorian. Jake understood every word through their connection. This is Princess Ashira. I have completed the sacred bond with Commander Jake Harrison of Earth. Under the old laws, I claim protection for his people and demand immediate withdrawal of all hostile forces. High Commander Zreth, you have no authority to proceed. Stand down, the response came in seconds. Zreth's face appeared on the view screen, twisted with rage. You have betrayed everything, child. The bond means nothing. I will burn your human pets from the stars and drag you home in chains. Then you will start a civil war, Ashira said calmly, because half your fleet will refuse to fire on the bonded mate of their princess. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then 6 Valorian ships broke formation. Then 12. Then 20. They were withdrawing. Zreeth's face darkened. This is not over. No, Ashira agreed. It has only begun. The first assassination attempt came 36 hours after the bonding. Jake felt it before it happened. A spike of warning through the neural link that sent him rolling out of bed half a second before the window exploded inward. Glass shredded his pillow. He hit the floor, reaching for the pistol he'd started keeping under the mattress. Ashira was already moving, her combat training taking over with fluid precision. 3 figures in black stealth suits poured through the window. Not Valorian. Human. Jake fired twice, dropping the first attacker. The second lunged at Ashira with a vibroblade. She caught his wrist, twisted, and used his own momentum to send him crashing through the doorframe. The third raised a plasma rifle. Jake felt Ashira's fear spike through the bond and threw himself forward. The plasma bolt took him in the shoulder instead of the chest. Pain exploded through both their minds. Ashira screamed his pain. He felt her rage, and together they crashed into the gunman with combined fury. Security forces flooded the room 20 seconds later to find all 3 attackers down and Jake bleeding on the floor while Ashira pressed her hands against his wound. "Stay with me," she whispered, but he felt the words in his mind too, double desperate. "Not going anywhere," he managed. Through the bond, he felt her terror that he was lying. The medical team sedated him. The last thing he felt before darkness was Ashira's presence in his mind, refusing to let him go. He woke in the infirmary 6 hours later. Ashira was sitting beside his bed, her patterns dim with exhaustion. Through the bond, he knew she hadn't moved since they brought him in. "You should rest," he said. "I cannot rest while you are hurt. The bond will not allow it." She touched his hand. "I felt everything. The pain, the fear. This is what being connected means. Your suffering is my suffering. Goes both ways."
Yes.
She looked away. The attackers were human. Extremist group called Purity First. They believe humanity should not mix with alien species. They want me dead and you disgraced. Jake sat up slowly, testing his shoulder. The military nano repair had already sealed the wound, though it ached fiercely. "They're not the only ones. I've been getting death threats since the bonding. So has my family. I know. I feel your worry for them through the bond." It was still strange having someone else inside his head. He'd catch himself thinking something private and realize Ashira had already heard it. She'd start to say something, and he'd know what it was before the words came. Privacy was a concept that no longer applied. Admiral Garrett entered the infirmary with Secretary Monroe. Both looked like they hadn't slept in days. "Glad you're alive, Commander," Garrett said. "We've identified the attackers." All 3 were former military, dishonorably discharged, radicalized through underground networks. They're part of a larger movement that's gaining traction. "How large?" Jake asked. "Protest in 40 cities. 3 more attacks attempted against Valorian refugees who've sought asylum here. The bonding was supposed to prevent war, but it's creating a different kind of conflict." Secretary Monroe pulled up a news feed. Jake watched footage of crowds burning effigies of him and Ashira, signs declaring "humans first" and "no alien contamination." Counter-protesters clashing with them, calling for unity and peace. "The Global Defense Council is fracturing," Monroe said. "Half want to leverage your marriage for diplomatic advantage. The other half want to annul it and send Princess Ashira back to her people. They cannot annul the bond, Ashira said quietly. It would kill us both. Some people consider that an acceptable price. Jake felt rage surge through the bond, not his own, but Ashira's, hot and fierce. My people are dying too, she said, her voice shaking. High Commander Zreath has declared me a traitor. Loyalists who supported the bonding are being arrested. My father has disowned me publicly, and still I chose this. Still I choose it. Her grief hit Jake like a physical blow through the bond. He grabbed her hand and felt her steady slightly, drawing strength from him as he drew from her. What about the Valorian situation? Jake asked, forcing himself to focus past the emotional turbulence. Garrett's expression darkened. Zreath has consolidated power. Your father-in-law is essentially a puppet now. The Valorian fleet has pulled back from Earth, but they're massing at the border. Intelligence suggests they're preparing for something big. Civil war, Ashira said. Just as I predicted. Zreath cannot tolerate my bonding because it undermines his authority. He will move against the moderate factions within weeks, and when he does, both our peoples will be drawn into the conflict. Human systems along the border will become battlegrounds. Jake stood up, ignoring the protest from his shoulder. Then we need to move first. We need to rally the moderate Valorian factions before Zreath can eliminate them. How? Monroe asked. You're confined to protective custody. Half of humanity wants you dead. You have no political authority. But I do, Ashira said. She turned to Jake, and through the bond he felt her resolve crystallizing into a plan. The bonding gives me legal standing to challenge Zreath's authority. There is an old law, rarely invoked, that allows a bonded princess to call for a grand conclave. All major Valorian houses must attend. If I can speak to them directly, I can expose Zreath's warmongering. They'll never let you near a conclave, Garrett said. Zreath would have you killed the moment you entered Valorian space. Not if I had protection. Not if I arrived with proof of Zreath's crimes. Jake felt her plan forming through the bond even as she spoke. It was audacious. It was borderline suicidal. It was exactly what they needed to do. You want to infiltrate Valorian space, gather evidence against Zreath, and then crash a political gathering where everyone wants you dead, Jake said. That's your plan. Our plan. I feel your tactical mind working through the possibilities even now. You already see how it could work. She was right. He did. And he hated that he did. We'd need a ship, he said slowly. Small, fast, able to pass Valorian security, and a crew we could trust absolutely. I know where to get one, Martinez said from the doorway. Jake hadn't even heard her enter. Captain Eric Stone, former Special Operations, runs an independent courier ship, owes me his life from a mission gone wrong 3 years ago. Can we trust him? He hates politicians and loves impossible missions. You're both. Martinez grinned. I already reached out. He's interested. Admiral Garrett held up his hands. Stop. All of you stop. What you're describing is an unsanctioned military operation in hostile territory. I cannot authorize this. Then don't authorize it, Jake said. We'll go anyway, Commander Harrison. I could have you arrested for suggesting that. You could, but you won't. Garrett stared at him for a long moment. Through the bond, Jake felt Ashira's nervous hope, her desperate belief that this could work. Finally, Garrett sighed. If you do this, if you somehow pull this off and survive, you might actually prevent a galactic war. But if you fail, you'll give Zreath everything he needs to justify full invasion. He paused. I can give you 72 hours before I have to report you AWOL. After that, you're on your own. 72 hours, Jake repeated. Through the bond, He and Ashira shared the same thought. It would have to be enough. Secretary Monroe shook his head. This is the most reckless diplomatic strategy I've ever seen. Good thing we're not diplomats, Jake said. Martinez was already on her comm, coordinating with Captain Stone. Ashira was pulling up star charts, plotting routes through Valorian territory, and Jake was checking his weapons, feeling the weight of what they were about to attempt. Through the bond, Ashira's voice whispered in his mind, "Are you afraid?" "Terrified," he answered honestly. "You?" "Beyond words, but also hopeful. We can do this, Jake. Together, together." The word meant something different now. They weren't just allies or partners. They were literally one consciousness in two bodies. If one died, the other would follow. Jake had spent his whole career fighting alone. Now he'd never be alone again. He wasn't sure if that was comforting or terrifying. Probably both. Captain Eric Stone's ship, the Wandering Star, was a battered freighter that looked like it had survived 3 wars and a scrapyard. Jake trusted it immediately. Anything too clean in this line of work usually meant you hadn't been tested. They jumped into Valorian space at the coordinates Ashira provided, a remote mining outpost where her loyalist contacts were hiding. The plan was simple. Get evidence of Zurith's war crimes, broadcast it during the Grand Conclave, and hope enough houses turned against him to force a stand down. Simple. Suicidal. Same thing. Through the bond, Jake felt Ashira's anxiety spiking as they approached her homeworld star system. These were her people, her culture, and she was about to expose their leader as a tyrant. "Contact in 30 seconds, Stone announced from the cockpit. The landing zone was a crater on an asteroid hidden from sensors. 3 Valorian ships waited there, smaller vessels marked with the crest of House Mirath, Ashira's allies. They docked. A Valorian commander named Velran met them at the airlock. He looked at Ashira with something between reverence and pity. "Princess, you should not have come. Zurith has ordered your execution on sight." "Then we must work quickly," Ashira said. "Do you have the evidence?" Velran handed her a data crystal. "Everything. Zreth's falsified reports about human aggression, orders to execute diplomats, plans to stage attacks on Valorian colonies and blame humanity. Enough to destroy him if the Conclave believes it." "They will believe it when I present it," Ashira said. "The bond makes me incapable of lying about matters of royal importance. It is known law." Jake felt her certainty through their connection, but also her fear. This had to work. There was no backup plan. Martinez was monitoring communications. "We've got a problem. Zureth just announced emergency session of the Conclave. It's happening now, not in 3 days. He's moving faster than we thought." "He knows we are here," Ashira said quietly. Through the bond, Jake felt her realization crystallizing. Someone betrayed us. Velran's hand moved toward his weapon. Jake was faster. His pistol was already aimed. "Don't," Jake said. Velran froze. "I am sorry, Princess. Zurith has my family. He promised their safety if I delivered you." Through the bond, Jake felt Ashira's heartbreak. Not anger, just profound sadness. "I understand," she said. "I would do the same for those I love." Alarms screamed. Stone's voice crackled through comms. Valorian warships dropping out of hyperspace. Lots of them. "We need to leave now." Jake grabbed Ashira's hand. They ran for the Wandering Star, Martinez providing covering fire as Velran's guards opened up. Stone had the engines hot, the ship already lifting off as they dove through the closing airlock. Space erupted with weapons fire. 6 Valorian cruisers had them surrounded. "Well, this is bad," Stone said conversationally. throwing the ship into evasive maneuvers. "Can you get us to the Conclave?" Jake asked. "The Conclave is happening on Zreth's flagship, the same flagship currently trying to blow us into atoms. So no, I cannot get us there." Through the bond, Jake felt Ashira's mind racing. Then suddenly, clarity. "Yes, you can," she said. "Crash into it." Everyone stared at her. "The flagship has ceremonial shields during conclave sessions," Ashira explained rapidly, "lower powered for the symbolic opening of dialogue. If we hit them fast enough, we can breach the hull near the conclave chamber." "That will kill us," Stone pointed out. "Not if we use escape pods at the last second," Martinez said, catching on. "Rough landing, but survivable." Jake looked at Stone. "Can you do it?" Stone grinned. "I can crash into anything once." They punched through the Valorian formation, shields screaming as plasma bolts hammered them. Stone plotted an intercept course with the flagship, pushing the engines past safety limits. The ship was shaking apart around them. "Pods launching in 30 seconds," Stone announced. "This has been a terrible pleasure working with you all." Through the bond, Jake felt Ashira's fear and determination intertwined with his own. They were going to make it or die together. There was something almost peaceful about that certainty. 20 seconds. The flagship loomed huge in the viewport. 10 seconds. They scrambled into escape pods. 5 seconds. Stone hit the final burn. 0. The wandering star became a kinetic missile, traveling at impossible speed. It punched through the flagship's ceremonial shields and impacted the hull in a massive explosion. Jake's pod was already away, spinning wildly. Sensors whited out from the blast. They crashed through debris, through secondary explosions, and finally through a breached bulkhead directly into the conclave chamber itself. Jake's pod split open on impact. He rolled out, weapon ready, and found himself facing 200 of the most powerful Valorians in the galaxy. They stared at him in absolute shock. Ashira's pod landed beside his. She emerged with the data crystal held high, her royal bearing absolute despite being covered in soot and blood. "I invoke my right as bonded princess to address this conclave," she declared in Valorian. High Commander Zareth stood at the chamber's center, his face twisted with rage. "Seize her. Seize the human. They are traitors." Half the guards moved to obey. The other half hesitated, caught between duty to Zreth and duty to royal law. Ashira pressed the crystal into the chamber's projection system. Images flooded the room. Zoreth's orders, his falsified reports, his plans for war. "This is your High Commander," Ashira said, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent chamber. "A warmonger who manufactured conflict to seize power. He imprisoned diplomats, not spies. He planned to attack our own colonies and blame humanity. All for his ambition. Lies!" Zreth roared, but his voice cracked. An elderly Valorian stepped forward, wearing the crest of House Kyrian. "The bonded cannot lie in matters of royal importance. This is known. If Princess Ashira speaks falsehood, the bond would break and she would die. Yet she lives." Other house leaders were nodding, studying the evidence with horrified expressions. Zureth drew his weapon, aiming at Ashira. "Then she dies now." Jake moved without thinking, throwing himself in front of her. The blast took him in the chest. Pain exploded through the bond. He heard Ashira scream, felt her agony matching his own. They collapsed together, their minds spiraling toward darkness. But through the bond, something else was happening. Ashira's Valorian physiology, her accelerated healing, was bleeding through their neural connection. His human adaptability was reinforcing her strength. They were keeping each other alive. Jake's eyes opened. The room had erupted into chaos. Half the Valorian guards had turned on Zareth. The house leaders were shouting for his arrest. Martinez and Stone had fought their way into the chamber, weapons blazing. Zareth was being dragged away by his own people, still screaming threats. The elderly Valorian from House Kyrion knelt beside Jake and Ashira. The conclave recognizes Princess Ashira's claim. High Commander Zareth is removed from authority. The war fleet will stand down. He looked at their intertwined hands, at the way their patterns had synchronized. You have done something remarkable. You have chosen each other over war. Ashira helped Jake sit up. Through the bond, he felt her relief, her exhaustion, her fierce joy that they'd survived. Is it done? He asked. Is it really done? The war is ended before it began, she confirmed. Now comes the harder part, building the peace. Jake laughed weakly. Harder than crashing into a flagship? Much harder. It will take years, decades, perhaps our entire lives. Good thing we've got our entire lives. Through the bond, they shared a moment of perfect understanding. This wasn't an ending. It was barely a beginning. There would be more attacks, more opposition, more people who wanted them dead for daring to choose unity over division, but they would face it together. Literally together, their minds and hearts joined in a way no one else could understand. 6 months later, Jake stood beside Ashira as she was formally crowned Empress of the Valorian people. The ceremony was attended by both Valorian houses and human dignitaries. Not everyone was happy, but enough people chose hope over fear. Through the bond, he felt her quiet satisfaction. They'd done it. Against impossible odds, against logic and reason and every tactical calculation, they'd chosen each other and saved the galaxy in the process. I love you, he whispered in English. Through the bond, she answered in Valorian. But he understood perfectly. He always would. And I love you, my impossible human, my bonded, my Jake. In the end, they proved something humanity had always suspected but could never quite articulate, that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't weapons or tactics or overwhelming firepower. It was two people refusing to accept that war was inevitable. It was choosing hope. It was choosing each other. Humanity? Fuck yeah.